and coming back to finish it off. Wondering if Liz is watching, because Liz loves this leopard. Oops. I do too. You can see those masseter muscles, those jaw muscles, as he's chewing between his ear and his mouth. Some quite a distinguishing feature of a big male leopard is very heavy jowls, and of course this dewlap, this very heavy skin under the neck, somewhat of an indication of age. I can't really remember how old he is. I've got to brush up on my leopard lore, and I'm sure a lot of you out there know. Of course, he's got his own Facebook page. So, questions at wildearth.tv if you have any questions, or you can send us a question through Twitter, #SafariLive. I'm wondering if we've got the Brush College School with us today. Ellen, you with us? Those beautiful eyes. Looking at something behind us. A little birdie just whispering in my ear that he was born around 2005, so he's going to be going on 10 years old, which puts him in his prime. This is the father of, I'd say the father of Karula's last 2 litters, if I'm not mistaken. The first two litters of Karula, the father was a wonderful leopard named MVULA Jordan. Although I have to be honest, the MVULA Jordan very seldom allowed us to follow him like this. I guess I ought to call it in. Stations 1 Madora Ingwe, Gallagher shortcut, just off of the cut line. Now you see, this is all about timing. And in the last few days, when we've been really getting a little bit desperate, I guess in some sense, but also driving around, trying to find animals, sometimes you get very, very lucky and you manage to find them on the road. But if we had been 5 seconds later, we would have missed him. He didn't leave the road because we were on the road. He left the road because he was on a beeline straight for this carcass. It tends to make me believe that it was his, rather than he picked up the scent. The behavior was a determined straight line from where he left the road coming straight here. He knows every square inch of his territory, so he knows exactly where it was that he left it. He didn't need to scent it out. He's got something stuck in his teeth or his tongue there. He's got maybe some fur, or there we go, he got rid of it. Sometimes a piece of bone or something gets stuck on the palate. That's something stuck on his tongue. It's like a piece of skin or... Are you picking up the sound?
Mm-hmm.
Go. Riley and Chris both sending a question on Twitter asking me what's the largest prey I've ever seen a leopard take. You won't believe it, but baby giraffe. And unfortunately I didn't see him take it. This was a very big leopard, probably about the same size as MVULA. It was up in East Africa in a game reserve known as the Selous Game Reserve, named after Frederick Courtney Selous. And I was doing overnight walking trails, and on our first morning actually, we started the morning following a pack of 5 dogs on the hunt, and then we followed them for a while when they went to meet up with the pups. And then when we left the dogs, we crossed over a little ridge and dropped down into a little drainage, not really a drainage line, but a floodplain area, and there was a giraffe, a baby giraffe, about 20 feet up a tree in what is known as Terminalia spinosa, the spiny terminalia, or the spiny cluster leaf. And I couldn't believe it. And as we were approaching, the leopard saw us, and being on foot, and being a very remote area, he obviously didn't like humans. He jumped down and disappeared. And later on, when we came back past there was a young female in the tree eating on the carcass. And while we were standing watching her, there was a lioness coming up the floodplain. It was one of the most incredible walks I've ever done. That whole weekend, it was a 3-night, 4-day walking safari. We slept in a little, what we call a fly camp, under a grove of jackalberry trees. But anyways, baby zebra, I've got a leopard at home that has taken baby zebra into marula trees, and young wildebeest. I've known leopard to take young wildebeest. Then again, there's also perhaps even more of a fight than a young wildebeest or a young zebra, or even, for that matter, a young giraffe. One of the most impressive, not necessarily biggest, but one of the most impressive. And I've seen it on numerous occasions with a couple of different leopards. One was a leopard by the name of, I'll think of it, it's just slipped my tongue. Mbombi, his name was. Mbombi. He was born in Londolozi I knew him when he was 11 years old, and that was in 1996. So he was probably born around 1995. He was a professional warthog hunter, and I saw him take out some very, very big warthog boars. And well, even a medium-sized warthog is far more of a fight than a baby giraffe or a baby zebra. And then there was a leopard down in the Sabi Sand, lower Sabi Sand, and down on the Sabi River. Once again, loved warthog. And sometimes leopard that specialize in warthog learn that they can outweight them in a termite mound, and if they lie on top of the termite mound, eventually the warthogs get so stressed out that they try and make a dash for it, and of course invariably the leopard gets one, because they become very adept at picking the right spot to be able to do so. Of course, it's not every time. There have to be times when they miss, but anyways, this particular leopard down on the Sabi River was in the time before the Sabi Sand was incorporated into Kruger, and we used to have, it was just a little cattle fence. It wasn't very much of a fence, along the edge of the Sabi River, between the Sabi Sands and the Kruger Park. And we used to cross a stile over the fence to go and watch hippo on the river. And there was a warthog carcass down there. And I suppose being young, and in the old days we did some silly things, but we decided we were going to take the carcass onto our side of the fence, so that when he came back for it, we'd be able to watch him. But anyways, it was such a big warthog, it took 2 of us to try and carry it, or drag it. We couldn't carry it. What's he on there now? A foot. The hoof sticking out of his mouth. He's not going to digest hair and bone, and the hoof as well, which is just like horn. It's just pure keratin. All of the cats don't digest hair and bone, so of course all of that is going to come out in his dung. Go. Twitter question from M. Waite came in, wanting to know what sort of hunting range or what sort of area he would cover in his hunting. Well, it would all be within his territory. I doubt whether he would hunt outside his territory. My guess is for a big male leopard in this part of the world, around about 1,000 hectares, call it just over 2,000 acres, 2.2 acres. But getting back to territory size, you take an area that is far more sparsely vegetated or like drier, you'll find that leopards will have a much larger territory. They need to cover more ground to get their prey. But also, as I was saying, they don't have to have the large pride. They can't subsist on small prey that up into one or two mouthfuls. The energy dynamics just won't work because the amount of energy that they put out in the hunt needs to be doubled going back in, so that they can not only fill their belly but gain enough energy to hunt again. Whereas the leopard, being the type of cat that it is, doesn't need to expend very much energy in the hunt. So if it wanted to kill a francolin, which is a small game bird, or a dove or a mongoose, or they can have a lot of smaller meals. We have a population of leopard that I'm still waiting to hear whether they actually decided that they're a separate subspecies down in the Cape, in the mountains of the Cape. And while there are antelope and things that live in those mountains, those leopard feed mostly on hares and birds and probably lizards and small reptiles and things. And so there isn't really a consistent figure of how big a leopard's territory will be. I don't think anybody heard me. Question coming from the other side of the planet, California. Hello, Sarah. Coming from California, wanting to know if there's any part of the kill, any part of the carcass that the leopard will not eat. And that depends, because it depends on what it is that it's eating. A small or dwarf antelope, poor thing this time, but it's relatively small. He's able to get through even the joints of the long bones. He's probably able to get through pretty much most of the skull. He will probably swallow the hooves, although, as I was saying earlier, the hoof and the bone, all those bone fragments, stomach acid will digest some of it, but in his dung from now over the next few days, his dung is going to consist mostly of hair and acid washed bone and hoof and the undigestible material. So if the horns were going to be eaten, if there were any little horns. But generally the skull, a leopard will open up the skull, will break open the back of the brain case to get to the brain, and it will chew the snout, but it won't really go for the teeth. Sometimes you'll find teeth in dung, if it's, say, for example, a very small and young animal where the bone hasn't really hardened that much and it's able to get through that. With the duiker, the size, I would imagine that it could get through most of it. It'll be able to get through the top of the jawbone where it joins the skull, where the masseter muscles join onto the bottom jawbone, but it probably won't eat the front part of the jawbone where the molars are. The upper part of the skull, the whole nasal cavity will be eaten, but it won't eat the eye sockets and the sort of frontal part of case. If it was a baby impala, which is maybe about the same size as the duiker, it would probably eat the entire skull because it's a lot softer and the teeth haven't really developed. The teeth are very, very brittle. As we drive around over the next few weeks, when I do find some leopard dung, or lion dung for that matter, I'll be able to show you the pieces that come out of it. Unfortunately, at first, the dung is very, very messy, because the first thing that any of the cats go for are the soft parts, the rump, and some of the internal organs. So the dung that comes out within the first part of eating a carcass is unpleasant, to put it mildly. He's been watched behind us. Later on, sometimes you'll have a leopard, it'll have a kill in a tree for several days, and it'll come back to it, and eventually all that's really left is skin and bone and hair, and a little bit of meat here and there, maybe a little bit of gristle, and that's the kind of dung that when it comes out, it's relatively clean. And then, of course, being the rainy season, it washes out all the messy stuff. And sometimes when it's dried out after a while, it's quite amazing, because you can sift through it, and as long as you've got gloves on and you can handle the concept of it, because it's not really that yucky. It's interesting finding the little pieces of whatever it was that they ate. It's how one learns. It's a learning process. It's a way to discover how nature works and what actually doesn't work. I suppose the other part of an animal that a leopard's not going to eat is going to be the spinal column, the vertebra. But as I said earlier, it depends on the size of an animal. For an impala, for example, an adult impala, a leopard's going to eat most of the meat off the bone, but edges of the rib cage, pretty much the same part of the skull as I was mentioning, but you will sometimes find almost a fully articulated skeleton after a leopard is finished with an adult impala. It might chew on some of the leg bones and things, but the bone, being an adult, the bone gets rather dense, and they might try and crack it to get to some of the marrow in the long bones, but the larger the animal, obviously, the denser the bone, so the more bone is left behind. And those little bits that are left behind just get crunched up by hyena. Now, hyena are quite unique in the mammal world, in particular, in that they can digest hair and bone and hoof and horn, and so they're able to pick up the pieces, as it were. Jackal, to some extent as well, but also remember, hyena are not only scavengers, they're pretty good hunters. Last night we had a couple of hyena tailing the herds of impala out on the open area near camp called Quarantine, and I've no doubt they probably had one or two little babies. I should take a photograph. Could, although it's not great with my little camera. Can you see the nicks in his ears? Both of his ears have got very distinctive tears and nicks in them. One of the easiest ways to identify a leopard, from having to identify it with the spot pattern. Of course, sometimes when you have a leopard and you know its territory, when you find a leopard within a particular territory, you're sometimes pretty much guaranteed that that's who the leopard is. Not always the case. But there's always something about a leopard that you can tell you who it is without having to revert to finally looking at spot patterns. There are the spots above the eye. You just need to choose either eye. The corner of the eye, as he's now looking to the side there, you can see there's a very particular little configuration of spots just on the corner of the eye. Even the spots on his ear, I can see just on his right ear, there's one spot on the tip of his right ear, and on his left ear there are two spots there. They're very distinctive features. But before you even get to the spot pattern, those little nicks and tears in the ear become a unique feature, because there can't be another leopard that can go through the same kind of trials and tribulations of leopard life and get scratched and torn in exactly the same way. But he is a magnificent cat. Look at them. Even his eyebrows have got muscles in them. Specially designed cutting teeth that he's using now, known as carnassials. Those what we call tricuspid, or those triangular shaped sharp cutting teeth in the side that are the equivalent of molars and premolars, cutting through skin and gristle and probably bone even. Mark your Wildearth. Stand by one. Sorry, repeat please. There was one in Yari at Garrick Dam. There was a dog there, but he moved up towards Wiffles or Cutline. I lost him, but I'm with the Ingwe now on Gallagher Shortcut. He is. Okay, copied. Yeah, I'm Wiffles or Cutline side on Gallagher Shortcut. Go ahead. Thank you for the email, Brenda. Brenda's in Pennsylvania. And Brenda would like to learn a little bit more about hunting tactics. Do they drop down from above? How do they hunt? Should I start that one with it depends? Because it does, it depends on many, many different things. Brenda, they're very much opportunistic hunters. So any possible scenario you could think of is a method of hunting for a leopard. And they are known to drop out of trees onto prey. It's not a very common method of hunting. That's more a case of seizing the opportunity because it's there. Leopards sleeping up in a tree to get away from the heat and the flies, not necessarily waiting for something, although there are times when certain trees are flowering that it attracts certain antelope to come and feed on the fallen flowers underneath the tree. And I've known and only in specific areas where these trees grow, because it wouldn't happen here. We've only got one tree known as a sausage tree, and the flowers, very big, lovely maroon coloured flowers. When the flowers fall, they snapped up by duiker and bushbuck and nyala. And up in East Africa, where these trees are quite prolific, and of course they're huge, massive trees up there, it's been known for leopard to do that there. I have to be honest, here in the Kruger area, even at home, which is also Kruger area in the Timbavati, I can't recall ever seeing it. Generally, the leopard around here will stalk their prey. Let me start from the beginning. A leopard, it's generally a solitary cat, lives in relatively thick bush, like we're in now. It is not a running hunter like a cheetah or somewhat like a lion. Lion don't quite run like cheetah do, but they do run after their prey. Leopard needs to get really, really close. Stalking and pouncing is their game, and they will use obstacles, they'll use stealth, and they will use their most amazing, incredible show of patience to get close to their prey, and they'll take one or two leaps and they'll bring it down if they can. A leopard cannot run very, very far. It doesn't have the stamina for it, doesn't have the musculature for it. It has musculature for stalking and pouncing, and of course the strength to take its prey up a tree if it's threatened by other predators. There are leopards that have been known to catch fish, hook them out of the water, catfish in particular, hook them out of the water in drying up water holes and pans. But not every leopard will do that. It's only a leopard that has somehow learned how to do it, maybe somehow from its mother, or something clicked in its brain and it learned how to do it. Animal behavior is unique, or rather the behavior of an animal is unique to that particular animal. While generally we can talk about leopards, every single leopard does its own thing in a different way. I was talking a little bit earlier about certain male leopards that would lie on top of a termite mound until they intimidated the warthog enough to get the warthog out of the termite mound. And not everyone will do that. So times one has to imagine that when we're looking at an animal and we're speaking about behavior, we don't necessarily mean that that is how it is for every member of that species, because they are individual thinking, feeling, motivated creatures that act on spur of a moment. I think we're going to need to move a little bit because he's now put his head in a place where we're not going to see much. I'm going to try if I can move forward. That they got accustomed to the being who would actually use the to help them hunt. So they would walk alongside the vehicle and take an opportunity if there was impala or something nearby. Such a big bunch of sticks in front of me. Jacqueline, that you're asking about being in the vehicle. Yes, actually. I've had occasion where perhaps I've been a little bit too close, or an animal has come a little too close and decided, but not outright aggression. I mean, I've had leopards and snarling at me. I've had elephant getting a little bit upset. It's bound to happen. We're a foreign entity moving around in their world, and sometimes he did get a little bit of concern a few seconds ago, about a minute or so ago. I could get a little low rumble out of his throat. But as long as everybody sits quietly and we all maintain a sitting position, there's no need for him to feel threatened.